They park their luxury cars and never look twice at the garage attendant. Business executives rushing to meetings, lawyers heading to court, wealthy residents returning to their downtown condos. To them, Raymond Chen was just part of the infrastructure, someone who took their tickets, validated their parking, and faded into the background of their important lives. "What a boring job," they'd whisper to each other, "just sitting there all day doing nothing." What they didn't know was that Raymond Chen had spent 16 years with the FBI Auto Theft Task Force, dismantling organized crime rings across 3 states. He'd brought down operations that moved hundreds of millions of dollars in stolen vehicles. He was an expert in VIN fraud, chop shop logistics, and the sophisticated networks that make luxury cars disappear across international borders. And over the past 3 weeks, Ray had been watching something unfold in their parking garage. Something that looked perfectly legitimate to everyone else, but screamed organized crime to someone who'd investigated over 200 auto theft cases. The boring parking attendant was about to blow a multi-million-dollar operation wide open, because some people never stop being investigators, even when they're wearing a uniform that makes them invisible. The Metropolitan Tower parking garage, downtown Chicago. 7 levels of concrete and fluorescent lights serving a mixed-use building that housed law offices, financial firms, and luxury condominiums. The kind of place where BMWs, Mercedes, and Teslas outnumber regular cars 3 to 1, and where monthly parking costs more than some people's rent. Raymond Chen had worked there for 3 years, manning the booth on the ground floor. His job was simple: take tickets, validate parking for building tenants, keep an eye on things. The building management liked him because he was reliable, quiet, and never caused problems. The customers barely noticed him at all, which was exactly how Ray wanted it. At 51, Ray looked like what people expected a parking attendant to look like: slightly overweight, graying hair, cheap reading glasses, and the kind of tired demeanor that suggested this was all life had left to offer him. People saw the uniform and made their assumptions, never bothering to look. Ray had taken this job deliberately, not because he needed the money, though FBI pensions weren't as generous as people thought. He'd taken it because after 16 years of high-stakes investigations, he'd needed something quieter, something where he could use his skills without the pressure, the politics, and the constant danger that came with federal law enforcement. But 3 weeks ago, Ray had noticed something. And once you've trained your mind to see patterns in criminal behavior, you can't just turn that off. Raymond Chen had joined the FBI at 27, after 5 years as a detective with the LAPD Auto Theft Division. He'd grown up around cars. His father had owned a repair shop in Los Angeles, and Ray could spot a stolen vehicle modification from 50 feet away. The FBI Auto Theft Task Force had been perfect for him. It wasn't the glamorous side of federal law enforcement that made it onto TV shows. No hostage rescues, no terrorism cases, no serial killer profiles. Just organized crime, international smuggling rings, and the sophisticated networks that moved billions of dollars in stolen vehicles every year. Over 16 years, Ray had become one of the Bureau's top experts. He understood how professional theft rings worked, the scouts who identified high-value targets, the thieves who could steal a keyless entry vehicle in under 60 seconds, the transporters who moved cars through underground networks, the document forgers who created clean titles, and the international exporters who shipped vehicles to countries where American luxury cars commanded premium prices. Ray had worked cases that spanned from Los Angeles to Miami, from New York to Houston. He'd infiltrated chop shops, posed as a buyer for stolen vehicles, and coordinated with international law enforcement to recover cars that had been shipped overseas. His investigations had resulted in over 200 arrests and the recovery of vehicles worth more than $300 million. The work had been satisfying but exhausting. The criminals were smart, well-funded, and increasingly sophisticated. They used encrypted communications, counter-surveillance techniques, and international borders to stay ahead of law enforcement. Every case required months of surveillance, careful evidence gathering, and coordination across multiple. It started with a BMW 750i. Beautiful car, probably $80,000 new. Ray had seen it come through the garage 3 times in 2 weeks, which wasn't unusual. Plenty of people used the garage regularly. What was unusual was that it had different license plates each time. Most people wouldn't notice. The plates were all Illinois registrations, all looked legitimate, and the car itself was identical each time. But Ray noticed, because noticing things like that had been his job for 16 years. Then there was the Mercedes S-Class, brand new, maybe a week old based on the temporary tags. Except when Ray checked the VIN through the windshield, something felt wrong. The number placement looked slightly off, and the font didn't quite match Mercedes' factory specifications. Again, most people wouldn't catch it. But Ray had examined thousands of VINs, both legitimate and fraudulent. He knew what genuine factory stampings looked like, and this one triggered every alarm bell in his professional experience. Over the next 2 weeks, Ray documented 7 more vehicles with anomalies, different luxury cars, all high value, all showing signs that something wasn't quite right. License plates that looked legitimate but didn't match vehicle registration patterns. VINs that were almost correct but showed subtle signs of alteration. Temporary tags with expiration dates that seemed too convenient. Individually, each could have been explained away. Borrowed cars, paperwork delays, innocent mistakes. But taken together, they formed a pattern that Ray recognized immediately. This was a professional operation. Someone was using the Metropolitan Tower garage as part of a sophisticated vehicle fraud scheme, and based on the frequency and variety of vehicles involved, it was a big operation. Ray could have called his old contacts at the FBI, made an anonymous tip, let the Bureau handle it. That would have been the smart thing to do. But Ray wasn't just an observer. He was an investigator. And after 3 years of validating parking tickets, part of him missed the chase. Ray started documenting everything. Not officially. He had no authority, no badge, no warrant. But old habits run deep, and Ray knew how to build a case. He kept detailed logs of suspicious vehicles, dates, times, VINs, license plates. Within 2 weeks, Ray had identified the core operation. A man in his 30s, always wearing business casual clothes, driving different luxury vehicles each week. He'd arrive on Tuesdays, park for exactly 4 hours, then leave. The vehicles he drove were always new or nearly new, always with temporary tags or recently issued registrations, and always from different dealerships across the Midwest. Ray recognized the profile immediately. This was a paper car operation, using fraudulent documentation to create legitimate-looking identities for stolen or illegally obtained vehicles. The garage was probably being used as a neutral transfer point, a place where high-value vehicles could be exchanged or documents swapped without drawing attention. On the 3rd Tuesday in November, Ray made his move. When the BMW with the suspicious VIN pulled in, Ray processed the ticket normally, smiled politely, acted like he'd never seen the car before. But he'd already called his former FBI partner, Special Agent Monica Rodriguez, who was still active on the auto theft task force. "Monica," Ray had said, "I need you to run some plates for me. Unofficial, just checking on something." Monica had protested. Ray was retired. He had no standing. This wasn't proper procedure. But they'd worked together for 8 years, and she trusted his instincts. When the background checks came back, Ray's suspicions were confirmed. Multiple vehicles registered to fake companies, VINs that matched stolen vehicle reports from other states, insurance documents that were sophisticated forgeries. This wasn't just a small-time operation. This was organized crime with connections across multiple states. "Ray," Monica had said on the phone, "we need to bring this to the task force. Set up proper surveillance, get warrants, do this by the book." "I agree," Ray replied, "but I want to be there when you take them down." The FBI raid was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Ray had provided detailed intelligence, expected arrival time, vehicle descriptions, suspect identification, and the layout of the parking garage. The Bureau had put together a team of 8 agents, coordinated with Chicago PD, and secured the necessary warrants. Ray was supposed to work his normal shift, act natural, and stay out of the way when the arrest team moved in. But things never go according to plan. He left his booth and headed for Level 3. When Ray approached, both suspects immediately recognized something was wrong. Ray didn't look like a parking attendant anymore. His posture had changed, his demeanor had shifted, and his voice carried an authority that made both men freeze. "FBI," Ray said, which wasn't technically true anymore, but accurate enough for the moment. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The first suspect, the regular Tuesday visitor, started to comply. But the second man reached into his jacket. Ray moved faster. Years of defensive tactics training kicked in automatically. He closed the distance, grabbed the man's wrist before the weapon cleared his jacket, and used a joint lock technique that dropped the suspect to his knees. The first suspect tried to run. Bad decision. Ray swept his legs and had him face down on the concrete in under 3 seconds, using a control hold that kept him immobilized without causing injury. "Stay down," Ray said calmly to both suspects. Then he keyed his phone. "Monica, Level 3, southeast corner. I have 2 in custody. Tell your team to move now." When the FBI raid team reached Level 3, they found Ray holding both suspects in perfect custody control positions while reading them their Miranda rights from memory. Special Agent Monica Rodriguez stared at her former partner with a mixture of exasperation and admiration. Ray, what part of "stay out of the way" was unclear. "They moved early," Ray replied. "Document exchange in progress. Couldn't let them leave with the evidence." The investigation that followed revealed an operation even larger than Ray had suspected. The 2 suspects he'd detained were part of an international vehicle fraud ring that had moved over $50 million in stolen and fraudulently titled vehicles over 3 years. The Metropolitan Tower garage had been used as a document exchange point precisely because it seemed so normal, so boring, so beneath anyone's attention. The boxes they'd been transferring contained title certificates for 127 vehicles, fake registration forms, fraudulent insurance documents, and detailed records of sales to buyers in 7 different countries. Ray's documentation over the previous 3 weeks became crucial evidence. His photographs, his logs,